Hey y'all, so before I get this video started, let me give a quick shout out. These were the first 3 comments in my last video. If you want to be featured in my next video, make sure you subscribe and hit the notification bell and come show me some love when I drop a new video. What's up, you guys? It's KeAmber Vaughn, aka CoachKe, coming back to you with another video. If you are new to my channel, welcome, and if you're not new, welcome back. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and also tap the bell so that you are notified of every new video that I post. So as you guys can tell by the title of this video, I wanted to talk to you guys about my thought process and why I declined an additional raise at my job. More often than not, when people think about their jobs, they feel like they're underpaid, they want more raises, and there are different reasons why some people decide to decline raises. A lot of times it has to do with the fact that they might have to change their job duties to something different. Maybe they have to move up in the corporate ladder, and in moving up in the corporate ladder, they have additional responsibilities that they feel like is not worth the headache, their time, or the money that they'll pay for that headache and those additional responsibilities. But for me, it was a little bit different. So I'm going to walk you guys through my thought process and why I decided to decline a second raise at my job. So just a little background history. I've been at my job now for 4 years. I believe it made 4 years in September. And at my job, I'm actually considered an agency nurse. So I'm not directly employed through the facility. I'm employed through an agency who has me employed at the particular facility that I am at. And again, I've been there under this particular status for 4 years now. When I first got hired at this facility, literally when I was going through orientation, they were trying to get me to switch to be a full-time employee at that job, like literally out of the gate. And I continued to decline because I knew, number one, I did not want to work full-time. And number two, you know, some of the gimmicks that they talk to you about with the 401k and you have a great retirement and stuff like that, that stuff was not very appealing to me because I don't really see myself working in the workforce for 40 years and retiring anyway. So you throwing that little stuff at me literally meant nothing. The other reason why I wanted to stay agency was mainly because I have way more control over my schedule and I don't really have to deal with a lot of the politics that you have to deal with when you are employed directly through a facility. I come in, I go out. Anything in between ain't got nothing to do with me because I do not work for y'all, okay? That's just how I see it. So when I started working there 4 years ago, I had actually taken 3.5 years off as a nurse. So I worked for my first 14 months as a nurse at a neuro facility. Well, it actually was in a hospital, but I was on a neuro floor in Georgia and I was so burned out from it. Nursing was nothing like I thought it was, and it wasn't the reason why I got into nursing. Like everything that I actually had to do, I'm like, this is not why I got into this. So I decided to take a step back and build my businesses that I had in network marketing, and I had a little offline business as well. And after 3.5 years, no matter how much money I made, I made multiple 6 figures. I was very depressed. I was very sad all the time because the reality was I wanted to be a nurse since I was a child. And I realized that everything that I was doing in my businesses wasn't really conducive to my well-being, my mental health, and it did not really coincide and mesh well with my personality. So I decided to slowly introduce myself back into nursing and slowly drag myself away from that particular industry, which I've been out of 4 years at this point. So because of me being out of nursing for 3.5 years, they basically looked at me worse than if I was a new grad, because here it was, I had this little bit of experience, but I've been out of it for so long and now I'm coming back in, versus a new grad, although they might not have experience, they're fresh out of school learning these fresh skills and everything like that. So because of that, I decided to, I think I put my resume on Indeed or something. Somehow this agency got in contact with me. I'm almost sure it was through Indeed. And basically I let them know what was up. I've been out of nursing for this amount of time because of these particular reasons, and I'm ready to get back in. So they were like, well, you know, I don't know what we can find you because you've been out for so long, but let's see what we can do. Within a week, they ended up coming back to me with a job in an ICU and a job in psych. Now, for me, I always told myself when I got back into nursing, it would be in children's, psych, or ICU, because I felt like those were the 3 groups of people that I felt like really actually needed the care that they were given. Not saying the other ones didn't, but you know, with Western medicine, it could be a little bit much sometimes, especially when you're like in med-surg and stuff. So I decided on the psych facility. Now, here was the thing. The money that they offered me out of the gate, I didn't even do any research on the pay. I didn't even go on the company's website to see what the nurses were getting paid or anything. So what they ended up offering me, I just went ahead and took it. I wasn't tripping off of it. And if I'm not mistaken, I was offered $27 an hour, maybe. $27 or $28 an hour. I think it was $27 or $27.50 or something like that. So I jumped on it. Now the thing was, I was getting paid less than what I was getting paid as a nurse when I was a new grad, because as a new grad I was actually making I was making $20 an hour base pay. Then there was $4 an hour for night shift, and there was $5 an hour for weekends. And I usually worked weekend nights because I was living so far away from my family. It didn't really matter to me. So I took that $29 and was running with it. Okay. So with this, I'm like, okay, I'm getting paid a little bit less, but I'm also not working at a private hospital anymore. I'm working somewhere where the salaries are a lot more regulated. So it's a little bit different, and I'm okay with that. So my first year there, I couldn't really work very much. I didn't have access to the medication administration record, which is obviously what I need to be a nurse, right? I have to pass medications. So in the second year of being there, I believed I asked for a raise then, if I'm not mistaken. And I think that they ended up going up to maybe $29 an hour, I think. Might have the timeline a little bit off. The third year, which was last year, I ended up spending the majority of my time doing travel nursing. I spent 6 months out of the 12 months doing travel nursing, a little bit more than 6 months. And then in between, I would come back to this particular job. The cool thing was, because I was an agency nurse, I only had to put in a couple of hours every 90 days to not have to be rehired. So it worked perfectly for me. So at some point last year, I ended up going on the company website and finding out what the nurses were paid there. And I'm like, okay, wait a second, I'm getting paid less. And one of the perks of being a temp worker or an agency nurse or even a travel nurse is that you get paid more than the people that work there. So I was immediately, honestly, a little infuriated, because I feel like as an agency, you should be keeping up with what the nurses are paid so that you ensure that your nurses are at least paid the same, if not maybe $1 an hour more. I'm not asking for $10 an hour more, just a little old dollar, even 50 cents more would be fine, as long as it makes sense for me to be an agency nurse with you. So last year I went and I asked for an additional raise. They ended up going to $30 an hour, and I'm only speaking about my hourly rate because I mean it's shown in my budget videos on my channel anyway. So it went up to $30 an hour, and even then I knew that I was getting underpaid, because I knew that the night nurses who were PRN were getting paid $31 an hour at the time. So, and that was with like night shift differential or whatever. So I'm like, okay, you know, I wanted to fight for that extra dollar, but at the time my donor, sperm donor, was telling me like, oh, don't fight for that extra dollar. It's not a big deal. You barely work anyway. You only work part-time hours. Don't trip off of it. It is what it is. Just take the 30 and run. So I'm like, okay, fine, whatever. So fast forward to this year, there's been a lot of things happening at my job. Of course, COVID has happened. I was not able to work at that job from April 7th until June 3rd because they put a temporary hold on agency nurses. That's something that I wasn't even aware of. So I was able to collect unemployment but didn't know, and I'm still trying to fight to get that unemployment. But I did end up staying out for an additional month on top of that, just so that they can kind of get their processes together with how they were going to handle COVID with testing and everything like that. But with COVID coming and with the drastic change in the availability of nurses at the facility, the nurses, the PRN nurses, ended up getting another raise on top of that. So they ended up going up to $32 an hour plus a $2.88 an hour differential for night shift, which is what I work. It's what I've always worked. So once I found that out, I said, you know what, it's time for me to go back for another raise. I know I got one last year, but it's important to me for me to be able to keep up with the nurses there, not just because like I'm trying to keep up with what they make, but it's only what's fair, you know what I mean? And to me, if a facility has to go to agency nurses because they're so short staffed with their full-time nurses, their part-time nurses, and their PRN nurses who are hired directly through them, well, obviously they really need me, so you should pay me as such. The other thing is I've been the most consistent nurse to put in consistent hours with them as well. So I just felt like, you know, every time I go to check out keys at this facility, my name is literally just back to back to back to back to back. Then you'll insert one person and back to back to back. You know what I'm saying? So it's like, obviously y'all need me. They've been using me, so pay me what I'm worth. So fast forward to about a month ago, I did reach out to them to get another raise, which I was granted. I did have to fight for it because they eventually only wanted to give me $1 an hour raise. And I'm like, yo, listen, this $1 an hour raise is actually what y'all should have been paying me last year. I just didn't speak up about it because I'm like, you know what, I'm not finna fight y'all on it, but you are not gonna be able to give me a raise that you should have gave me last year. That don't even make sense to me. And I told them, I said, you know, I feel like it's y'all responsibility to keep up with what the nurses make there so that you guys are offering competitive rates, because if you're not offering competitive rates, it's literally impossible for me to get more nurses hired on with y'all, because when they find out they're making less than being hired directly through the facility, they're going to get hired directly through the facility, right? So they end up coming back and saying that they couldn't go past the $2 an hour raise that they ended up offering me, even though the other nurses make $2.88 more. So basically what I'm making right now is the base pay of what the PRN nurses make. I don't get that extra night shift differential, which is pretty freaking annoying. So at that point, I'm like, you know what? I'm not going to fight with it. I'm going to reach out directly through the facility's HR to find out what are the particulars with being hired directly on with them so that I can get that additional $2.88 an hour. And then I'll just say, to hell with my agency. It is what it is. Y'all have to understand that, you know, my love for y'all don't pay the bills, the money does. I reach out to HR and basically she let me know what the pay was, but, and here's why I declined it. She came and said that the main stipulation was that I could not work more than 1,040 hours in a year. That raised a red, well, not necessarily a red flag for them, but for me, because I was like, now wait a second, let me first kind of calculate how many hours I typically work in a year. So when I first started working there and I was actually able to work when I had access to the EMR or whatever, I was working full-time hours that helped me to get out of debt. And then when I tell y'all, as soon as I became debt free, I dropped that baby down to 25 hours a week and I left it at that. Okay, you don't get more than that from me. So I basically just worked 2 full shifts every week. Recently, with things that have been happening in my life and me carrying an additional bill every month, now I help my mom with a mortgage here. I was just like, you know what, that extra couple $100, I don't want it to come out of my budget, so I'll just work an extra 4 hours a week, which is just a mid pass. Do an extra 4 hours a week, that's 16 hours a month, will more than cover what I give her for rent, and we'll just keep it moving. Now, you know, I don't have to worry about my numbers kind of being off and me not being able to save as much money as I'm used to. So at that point, I went ahead and I calculated. So when I calculated what they get paid hourly, and I have my calculator out, times the 1,040 hours a year that I would have to make. And the other thing was I would have to work a certain number of weekends, I believe, and a certain number of holidays every year as well. That was another stipulation. So this is what I would have gotten paid per year if I decided to take the additional raise and get hired directly through the facility. So a little over $36,000 a year. Okay. Now, if I was to take the 29 hours a week that I work now, and I multiply that by what I get paid through my agency instead of through the facility, and then I multiply that by 52 weeks per year, this is what I get paid per year. Okay, so that's literally a difference of $12,000 $5,000 a year. So even though I would be getting a pay raise, I would actually be getting a pay cut in the end because I wouldn't be able to work as many hours as I want to work per year. Now, even if I was to go back down to 25 hours a week and I would take that extra med pass off every week that I work, I would actually end up still making $5,000 a year more, even if I reduce my hours per week back down to what I used to work. So that's why I decided, you know what, I'm not going to get hired directly through the facility because the extra $288 an hour is actually going to cut my entire yearly income by $5,000 to $12,000 a year, and it's not worth it. The other reason why it wasn't worth it is because I have full control over my schedule as an agency nurse, whereas if I was PRN directly through the facility, I would have the opportunity to get mandated when nurses don't show up or nurses are super late or whatever. I can't be mandated as an agency nurse. And then also, I basically have a set schedule now. The entire time I've been working there, I've been really nice and saying, hey, you know, what are your needs for this week? And I would just pretty much fill in where they needed me. Whereas now, because of the pandemic, they're literally needing a nurse every single night. So I said, you know what? I'm having trouble sleeping. I have really bad insomnia, and I also day trade. I'm trying to get things off the ground with that, as well as keeping up with my YouTube and stuff. I need more of a set schedule so that I'm not literally going crazy and being sleep deprived during the week and then trying to catch up on sleep and stuff like that. So now I have a set schedule of working Monday, Wednesdays, and Thursdays. Mondays and Thursdays are my full shifts, and then Wednesdays I just work a 4-hour shift. I just pass meds and I go home, and that works for me. So now I have this set schedule. It works well for my mental. Even though I'm not making as much hourly, I'm making more per year. I don't have to work any holidays if I don't want to. I actually ended up working Thanksgiving Eve, and I'm gonna work Christmas Eve, but that set schedule ended up making it to where I would work New Year's Eve, and I was like, hey, hold up. This week, I'm not working that schedule. Put me on full shift Monday, Wednesday, and a partial shift on Tuesday because I don't want to work on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. And guess what? It was changed. It was no problem. I also just told them recently that I won't be working the entire month of February. I'm going to take off January 29th to February 28th. And guess what? There's no repercussions. I don't have to worry about anything. So having that complete control over my schedule and making more money, that is much more, it's better for my mental than if I was to get hired directly through the facility. So that is why I turned down having that additional raise by being hired through the facility, because it didn't make monetary sense, and it doesn't make sense for my mental because then I would be under their control. So I hope that you learned a few lessons from this video. The biggest lesson being that you have to look at the bigger picture. Don't just look at your hourly, look at what stipulations would cause your yearly income to go down. Also think about the additional responsibilities you may have. Do you have to work more weekends? Do you have to work more holidays? If you're being hired directly through something or having to change your job position, will you be like susceptible to having to deal with more politics and different things like that? That stuff honestly really does matter. So again, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. If you guys have any questions whatsoever, feel free to leave them down below. Please thumbs up this video, subscribe if you haven't already, but other than that, I'll see you guys in the next video. Bye guys.